Good day everyone. This is the presentation of Group 3, Lesson 7, Beyond Human Communication. My name is Jennifer Pauline Carcole from BE Journal 1A, the leader of Group 3. So, pag-uusapan po natin ang communication between humans and nature. Ito ay isang pag-aaral na tumitingin sa kung paano tayo nakikipag-ugnayan sa kalikasan. Hindi lang ito tungkol sa pagsasalita, kundi sa lahat ng paraan ng pakikipag-usap, mula sa pag-aalaga ng halaman hanggang sa pagprotekta sa mga endangered species. Pinagsama-sama nito ang iba't ibang larangan gaya ng ecology, sociology at communication studies para maunawaan natin ang relasyon natin sa mundo. So may 4 theories tayo na pag-aaralan kung paano ito mauunawaan ang environmental communication. Ito po. So, una po is naturalizing culture. So, paano kaya natin nakikita ang kalikasan? Depende ito sa ating kultura. Halimbawa, sa ibang kultura, sagrado ang mga bundok. Kaya pinoprotektahan nila, samantalang sa iba, nakikita lang ito bilang pinagkukunan ng mga materials. Next is materiality of nature. Hindi lang puro ideya ang kalikasan, may physical na anyo ito at may malaking epekto sa atin. Isipin nyo ang bagyo, lindol o ang pagbabago ng klima. Ito ay halimbawa kung gaano kalakas at may kapangyarihan ang kalikasan. Next is the othering of nature. Minsan, iniisip natin na nahiwalay tayo sa kalikasan, pero tayo ay bahagi nito. Kung patuloy natin itong paghihiwalayin, maaari nating makalimutan ang ating responsibilidad sa pag-aaral nito. Ito ang nagiging dahilan ng pollution at pagkasira ng ating kapaligiran. Next is animate rhetoric. Nakikipag-usap din ang kalikasan sa atin kahit hindi gamit ang mga salita. Halimbawa, kapag may bagyo, nagbabala ito sa atin. Ang pagkatuyo ng mga dahon ay senyales ng tagtuyot. Kailangan nating matutong makinig at umunawa sa mga senyales.
And so now we will be discussing naturalizing culture. So today, we will be focusing our discussion with Donald Carbo's essay that is entitled Naturalizing Communication and Culture. So dito sa essay na to, it will explain the seminal work that explores how communication and culture are interconnected and mutually shaping. So here daw, sa essay na to, we will be facing or we will be encountering kung paano nga ba nakakaapekto ang kultura, ang culture, and how the people of the society or the community communicate. So sa essay na to, Carbo argues against simplistic or purely functional views of communication, advocating instead for a deeper ethnographic understanding of how communication practices are grounded in cultural context. Because, kaya nagiging ganito yung focus ng essay is because Carbo thinks or he is suggesting that communication is not universal. Kasi unlike many other theories, many other scholarly communication scholar na nagsasuggest na ang communication is a universal thing. Na the communication for us is the same for the communication for America, for Japan, in which Donald Carbo wants to deem opposite. So, ano ba yung naging ginawa ni Carbo or ano yung ini-implicate ng essay na kanyang sinulat? So, firstly, he wants to challenge universalist view of communication. Once again, Carbo critiques the idea that communication functions the same way across all cultures. He argues that many Western models of communication assumes universality, such as the notion that effective communication is always direct, explicit, or aimed at achieving consensus. These assumptions, he says, do not account for the vast diversity of communication practices around the world. So, once again, gustong patunayan ni Carbo na iba-iba yung way ng pakikipag-communicate ng tao depende sa kanilang kultura, sa kanilang tradisyon, depending on what they are used to, kung ano yung nakasanayan nila. Like for example, tayong mga Pilipino, ang doon natin, ang there natin, ano ba? Diba? Muso. Umuuso tayo kapag may tinuturo tayo. And that is a proof na ang communication is not the same for everyone. Diba? Iba-iba ang uri ng komunikasyon, iba-iba ang way, iba-iba ang style on how people communicate with each other depending on their traditions, their culture, and what they're used to doing. Ayan. So, number 2, communication as a culturally naturalized activity. So, Carbo proposed that the idea of naturalizing communication, which means understanding how communication is perceived and practiced as a natural or normal within specific cultural setting. What people believe in the common sense or natural communication is actually shaped by their cultural background. This idea helps explain why misunderstandings often happen in intercultural communication, not because people are bad at communicating, but because they are operating from different cultural norms. And once again, sinasabi nga dito na iba-iba talaga. We are very much different from each other the way we communicate and kung ano yung norm natin. Because a culture might see a certain thing that they considered normal to them, na this is okay lang to sa amin because this is what we do. This is kung ano yung nakasanayan namin. But on a certain degree, meron din namang mga culture that deems this act as something that is not normal or hindi naturally ginagawa. Like, let's say, for example, I don't know if you've seen a video of Keisha ate yung pangalan niya, Kesha, that was singing TikTok, yung Wake Up in the Morning, yon. So, may video siya sa Japan, na nakasakay siya sa isang tren sa Japan, in which she sang. Sa Japan, silence is very much appreciated. So, hindi normal sa kanila yung may bigla-biglang kakanta. So, again, ito yung pinuprove ng number 2 point natin na communication or yung norms natin might not be norms sa ibang lugar. Like yun nga, as I've said, for example, yung kay Keisha, maaring sa Amerika, normal yung nagkakakanta ka dyan sa tren. But sa Japan, hindi. In which, yun nga, nagkakabanggaan yung dalawang kultura and dalawang tradisyon, dalawang paniniwala. Excuse me. Ayan. Ethnography of communication. Carbo is a strong proponent of ethnography of communication, a method developed by Delheim. This approach studies how people in different communities use language and symbols to accomplish cultural goal. The focus is not just on what is said, but how is it said, why, and in what context. O hindi na tayo lalayo. Kunyari, compare and contrast tayo. May dalawang circle, yung isang circle is close na close ka. Yung isa naman, you're not very fond, or let's say ano na lang, let's say, yung isang circle, canal humor, yung isa aircon. Okay? Doon sa canal humor, nag-joke ka, baka patayin kita, o diba? Medyo explicit. But, the Canal Humor dismissed this, and they seen or they saw this statement as rather funny or a joke. Pero if gawin mo yun sa ibang kultura, hindi, that was not appropriate, that is not good, that is alarming, di ba? So yun yung pinopoint out ng ethnography of communication, na symbols, languages, or the way we speak, our tone, our diction, our, what do you call this, our accent, might deliver something that is very different from a group to a group, in which our case, in our culture and a culture. So, next, cultural terms and concepts of communication. So, Carbo highlights that many cultures have their own native theories of communication, which include specific terms, values, and beliefs about how people should talk, listen, argue, or show respect. These native terms are often deeply embedded in worldviews. So, once again, ibabalik natin yon sa Japan. In Japan, how do they pay respect? They pay respect by bowing. Nagbabow sila kung sino man yung makita nila na, let's say, na matanda sa kanila, or in just general, nila respeto na, they bow. Diba? While in the Philippines, we show respect how? By bless, pagmamano. Diba? This is how culture might differ in concept of communication. Iba yung maaaring maging practices natin sa practices nila. Iba yung maaaring maging practices ng Japan sa Amerika. Let's say, for example, on the way they speak, the way they argue, o kunyari na lang noon, let's say, eto, sa Pilipinas, kapag ang dalawang bakla ay nag-aaway, anong ginagawa? Sabunutan na yan, magsasabunutan yan, maghahablutan yan ng buhok. While in the New York, in the America, sa New York, sa ballroom culture, what do they do when they argue? They dance it out. They vogue. They strike poses. Kung sino mas magandang pose, yun yung panalo sa away nila. And that is how culture differs in terms of action, kung papaano magsalita, kung papaano makinig, kung papaano makipag-away. And that is what we're pointing out in here. And next is our communication as a site of cultural identity and power. So Carbo also examines how communication plays a role in expressing and shaping cultural identities and social power dynamics. People use language to perform roles, affirm groups, membership, and negotiate relationships. At the same time, dominant culture models of communication can marginalize or misinterpret other way of speaking. This leads to questions of whose communication norm are valued in institutions like school, media, or workplace. O let's say, eto na lang, let's put this for an example. So, sa mga coastal area, syempre, hindi naman sa ginajudge natin sila, pero that is the truth na kadalasan, dito yung mga foul words, dito yung mga madalas nagmumurahan, puta ka naman, diba? That is actually true for them, pero that is normal for them na. Hindi na masyadong masama compared sa higher class of living, in which sa middle class na they see this kind of action, yung pagsasalita, pagmumura ng ganto, on a vulgar note, diba? Bastos daw. Pero, yun yung difference. O, ayan, nagtatahulan ng mga aso, but bakit it again, yun yung parang nagiging difference kung may power dynamic. May ranking kung ano ba yung mas tama or ano yung mas maganda, kung sino yung mas angat, sino yung mas sikat, based on how people or a community communicates with themselves. Ayan, for example nga, let's put an example, yung sa language. Recently, meron akong nabasa, or not that much of a recent, pero I think that was past few months, wherein a university implemented a English only policy. Kasi daw, ito daw yung the only way for the students to achieve academic goodship, or kung ano man yung tawag doon, academic excellency, is by speaking only in English. So by that, the school, or we could assume that the school sees English as a superior language. Diba? Yun yung pinapaliwanag natin sa communication as a site of cultural identity and power. Kasi syempre, meron pa rin tunggalian dyan, meron pag-aaway kung ano ba ang mas angat, ano yung mas maganda, ano yung mas nararapat. That is the reality. Na nagpapantayan sila kung ano ba yung, what is higher in their senses, or kung ano yung mas higher sa standards nila. So, in conclusion, communication is culture in action in essence. Donald Carbo's essay teaches that communication is not just a tool for transmitting information. It is a cultural act. Wait lang. Ayan. Communication, every communicative event is shaped by and simultaneously shapes cultural understanding. Therefore, to study communication seriously, one must also study culture and vice versa. So, yun yung pinopoint out ng ating, or ng essay ni Donald Carbo, na culture and communication is affecting each other. And vice versa, na your communication style, how you communicate, will affect your culture, and your culture will affect your style of communication. Ayan. Okay, tapos na tayong last. So, for our next topic, we will be discussing the materiality of nature. So, much like the previous topic that I have discussed, we will be basing our discussion sa isang essay that was made, or that was written by Richard Roger. So, his essay was actually anchored in Donald Carbo's Naturalizing Communication and Culture. So, naka-angkla siya. So, interconnected siya. So, pinagbasihan, yes, pinag-aralan din ni Richard Roger ang essay ni Donald Carbo. And so, with that, he wrote down another essay that we would be studying today. So, once again, he anchored his essay sa essay that was written by Donald Carbo, that explains that nature is not a universal constant. It is perceived and communicated differently across nature. Kagaya ng sabi natin kanina, that communication is very different depending on the culture and the society you are in. And that very culture is very dependent on what nature on, or kung what type of nature environment that you are in. So, ayan, kagaya ngayon, nasa environment ako ng mga aso, kaya ang tata ko ng mga aso. Hindi. So, communication again about the nature of power relations. As I've said kanina, merong power dynamics sa communication, sa language, the way people speak, the way people act. Again, nasabi ko na yun earlier, the goal is to decenter Western modernist perspective that objectify nature or communication. Kasi nga, again, kagaya ng sabi ko kanina, most Western scholar suggest that communication is universal, in which Carbo wants to explain that it is not. It depends on the culture, the nature, the environment, the traditions, or whatnot. So, in Richard Rogers' Materiality of Nature, he builds on this foundation by foregrounding the material presence of agency of nature itself, where Carbo focuses on how nature is communicated. Rogers interrogated, wait lang, I'm sorry, let me just pause. Ayan, we're back. Pasensya na. Again, Richard Rogers builds on this foundation by foregrounding the material presence and agency of nature itself, where Carbo focuses on how nature is communicated. Rogers interrogates what nature does materially and symbolically in communication processes. This key intervention is to insist that nature is not just a discursive construct, but something material and agentic that affects what is that? What is written there? Human practices, policies, and discourses. Okay? So, nahati ito sa tatlo. Firstly, the materiality as a resistance. Roger highlights that nature in its material form, landscape, weather, bodies of water can resist or disrupt human designs and discourses. For instance, a flood can challenge political narratives about development. Natural development. Pasensya na, medyo Okay. Saan na ba yung... My God, ito pala. The next ko. Okay, let me So firstly, the materiality of nature. So materiality as resistance. So in this point, Roger highlights that nature in its material form, landscapes, weather, bodies of waters, etc. can resist or disrupt human designs and discourses. For instance, a flood can challenge political narrative about development, or a drought can force a cultural shift in agricultural practices. This shows that nature pushes back, asserting its presence in ways that cannot be reduced to symbolism. So, let's put an example. So, flood control. That was a project of President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. So, recently lang nagkabagyo and there was a huge flood, ang taas-taas ng baha. But, there was a project that was intended to stop or control the flood, which is the flood control project. Pero, since, dahil nga sabi nila, meron daw na flood control project, yet, bakit nagbaha? So, kinwestiyon ngayon, yung development, kung epektibo ba yung naging flood control. And so, once again, flood can challenge political narrative about development. Diba? So, once again, ito yung maaaring gawin ng nature as a material thing to resist or give off an impression of something, of some not. Okay? So, the co-constitutive relationship. He argues for a co-constitutive relationship between humans and nature. Just as humans shape nature through discourse and policy, nature shapes human experiences, meanings, and structures. This breaks down the binary of culture and nature, emphasizing that communication itself is grounded in material realities. Ayun, so once again, it says na nature, co-constitutive, or nakaka-apekto sa buhay, sa experiences ng mga tao. Next, of course, is materiality of nature, critique of symbolic reductionism. So Roger critiques the tendency of environmental rhetoric to reduce nature to symbol, a metaphor for purity, chaos, or wilderness, while Carbo exposes cultural variation interpreting nature. Roger insists we must not forget that real tangible ecosystem exist beyond our metaphor. Next. So Richard Roger, implication for communication and culture. Together, Carbo and Roger offers a compelling framework for eco-cultural communication. Carbo emphasizes that cultural mediation of nature, showing how societies encode nature into their communicative practices, while Roger emphasizes that material consequence and agency of nature, showing how physical world shapes and responds to those practices. And so yun lang ang ating discussion for the materiality of nature. I am passing this phone to our next reporter.
Hello, this is Tismo and welcome to my video report about the othering nature theory. First of all, what is othering nature theory? According to my sources, this theory suggests that we humans tend to separate ourselves from nature. It highlights that we humans view nature as something external and distinct from our existence. Like meron tayong inferior complex sa nature according to this theory, and we view them as something na nasa lesser plane of existence. Kumbaga sa triangle, tayo yung nasa pinakatuktok, sila pwedeng nasa pinakamababa o wala talaga mismo sa triangle. The causes of othering nature are complex, but some argue it's rooted in Western philosophical traditions that emphasize human exceptionalism, like industrialization, urbanization, and eventually environmental degradation. The consequences of this theory are far-reaching, contributing to environmental degradation, as mentioned, climate change, and loss of biodiversity. To address these issues, we need to reevaluate relationship with nature and recognize our interconnectedness with the environment, like tree planting, proper garbage disposal, and humane way of treating nature. If we work together, we can see a foreseeable sustainable future and mitigate the effects of this theory. Thank you.
So good day everyone, my name is Cherry Biglinogo and let's move on to the next topic, which is Animate Rhetoric by Natasha Sigurd. Natasha Sigurd is a scholar who wants us to rethink how we understand communication, not just as something humans to do with word, but as something shared across species and experiences. Her works also invite us to recognize animals and other living things also participate in shaping when it comes in communication. Sigurd also explore that moving away from the idea that humans are only the meaningful communicators and also opening up to the idea that other animate beings like animals also express themselves, affect us, and also shape our world, are more than human voices. So, example here is when your dog paws back at you when you are petting them, it is just not a random gesture. It's their way of petting you back. It is a sign of trust, loyalty, and love. Well, since the dog cannot speak, they will show their loyalty, their love through action. Yet, it's simple but beautiful reminder how much your dog adore you and trust you. So, it is amazing na yung way ng pag-communicate ng mga animal sa atin like dog is through action. Sigurd also encouraged us to listen to pre-rational, pre-linguistic, and pre-cognitive form of expression that we feel or sense rather than to decode logically. So, when we say pre-rational, it means knowing or reacting before thinking logically. Example here is a baby crying when it's hungry, not based on thought but on felt need. Next is pre-linguistic. Pre-linguistics mean happening before word. It includes sensations, emotions, gestures, or sounds. Example here is a baby feeling hunger or joy before they can say hungry or happy. So for last is a precognitive, which means before thinking, it's just a raw, immediate way we sense or react to something before we even realize we're doing it. For example, here is jumping back from a loud noise before you consciously register fear. Precognitive is a instinctive, bodily automatic happening beneath or before conscious thought.
Yo, this is Tismo and welcome to my video report about actor network theory. What is ANT or actor network theory? It is developed by Bruno Latour and Michelle Collin, and it is a framework for analyzing the relationship between human and non-human actors in network. Some key concepts of actor network theory. Number 1, of course, actors. Human and non-human entities that participate in networks. Number 2, networks. Complex webs of relationships between actors. Number 3, translation. The process of negotiating and aligning the interests of different actors. Lastly, number 4, enrollment. The process of recruiting and mobilizing actors to participate in network. Lastly, ANT has been applied in various fields including science and technology studies, sociology of work, and environmental studies. While ANT has been influential, it has also faced criticisms and challenges. Some argue that ANT overemphasizes the agency of non-human actors or neglects the role of power and inequality in shaping networks. Thank you.
Good morning everyone. My name is Micaela Jane Tabar and I will discuss about communications between humans and object and communications between humans and divine. So, what is communication between humans and objects? Communication between humans and objects encompasses various forms ranging from symbolic interaction to advanced technological interfaces. This interaction is fundamental in both daily lives and specialized fields, facilitating understanding and control over the physical environment. The first one is symbolic communication. Humans often assign meaning to objects, meaning using them as symbols to convey message without using a words or represent concepts. For example, a wedding ring represents commitment and flag represent a country's identity. This symbolic cues allows individuals to communicate abstract ideas without using words or ideas. The second one is nonverbal communication through objects. So, what is nonverbal communication through objects? Objects can convey message through their use or arrangement. For example, the way objects are placed in a room can indicate a person's mood or intentions. This form of nonverbal communications rely on shared cultural understanding and context. So, in other words, communication between humans and objects is a dynamic and multi-phase process that encompasses dynamic and symbolic representation, technological interfaces, and nonverbal cues. As technology advances, the ways in which we interact with and interpret objects to continue to evolve, offering new avenues for expression and understanding.
The Revenge of Crystal, the second tier of human communication with object, is offered by Jean Baudrillard, a French scholar who envisioned a reversal of human-object relationship because of growing power of the world of object over the subject. The Revenge of the Crystal, which is also the title of the Baudrillard book, summarizes Baudrillard's views of object in the contemporary commodity age. Baudrillard uses the word crystal to refer to object. It is a perfect syndenache because a crystal is a high pure object, more transparent and heavier than ordinary glass. Glassier than glass, objects are getting back at or the retaliating ageism humans taking the upper hand in the human-object relationship.
Sa communication between human and technology naman, ating pag-aaralan ng 4 na teorya na nagpapaliwanag kung paano nag-i-interact ang tao at technology. So may 4 theories tayong pag-uusapan na may iba't ibang pananaw sa pakikipag-ugnayan natin sa technology. Media Dependence Theory. Sinasabi ng teoryang ito na depende tayo sa media para sa impormasyon at entertainment. Next po is Media Equation Theory. Sinasabi ng teoryang ito, ang teoryang ito ay nagsasabi na,
So let's proceed to the next topic, which is media equation theory. Media equations theory, developed by Byron Reeves and Clifford Nass in the 1990s, suggests that human responds to media and technology as if they were real people. This means that we treat technology socially, not just functionally. We often interact with technology emotionally, socially, and not even politely, as if it were a human being. In short, we treat technology socially, not just functionally. Whether it's a smartphone, a computer, a video game, or a talking AI assistant. So dito na nagkakaroon ng social responses to media. People unconsciously apply social norms like politeness when it comes to interacting with media. So, nagkakaroon ng applications or humans-computer interaction. Example here is saying thank you to Alexa or a voice assistant. Next is feeling emotional during a movie or about a video game character. For the last is treating a computer more favorable just because it's asked about its own performances. The theory suggests that people interact with media such as computer, televisions, and other technologies. In the same way, they interact with other human beings, despite knowing that media are not alive. People apply social rules and expectations to them unconsciously. Technology and media are now widely used as a modes of communications because they offer speeds, convenience, and also global reach. With just a smartphone or computer, people can instantly connect with others through text, message, video calls, or social media platforms. For many people like me, using media is not just a choice, it has become a necessity for personal, educational, and professional interaction in a modern world.
Media dependency theory was developed by Sandra Ball-Rukic and Melvin DeFleur. It explains how people rely on media to meet their needs and achieve goals like getting information, entertainment, or staying connected. The theory says that the more we depend on media or a certain type of media, the more influence it has on our thoughts and emotions. For example, for someone who follows sports closely may rely heavily on sports media, while others may ignore it completely. Media dependency theory also points out that our relationship with media is different for everyone, depending on personal situations and social environments. In short, this theory shows that media affects people in different ways depending on their needs and situations. Next one, we have the digital play and media transference theory. In this, they explored how digital gamers are used, why people play them, and how playing games can affect both online and offline life. To better understand why people play, they interviewed gamers of different ages and genders. And the research showed that gaming isn't just for fun. It can actually affect real life. It can influence a person's identity, relationships, and confidence. One important finding is that not everyone who plays game identifies as a gamer. That identity depends on how often they play, whether their friends are gamers, the types of games they play, and also age and gender. Younger males are more likely to call themselves gamers. In conclusion, digital games are powerful tools that go beyond entertainment. They affect how people see themselves, how they relate to others, and how they act in both the online and real world.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ngayong araw ay tatalakayin natin ang isang paksa, ang media transform, ang pagbabago ng komunikasyon sa panahon ng teknolohiya. Sa panahon ngayon, hindi na sapat ang tradisyonal na paraan ng komunikasyon. Ang media transform ay tumutukoy sa proseso kung saan ginagamit ang makabagong teknolohiya upang baguhin, pabilisin, o kahit limitahan ang ugnayan ng mga tao. Mahalaga ito sa ating pag-unawa kung paano naiiba ang ating pakikipag-usap hindi lamang sa isa't isa, kundi pati na rin sa teknolohiya. Bumalik tayo saglit sa kasaysayan. Noon, ang komunikasyon ay simple, gamit ang sulat, liham, telepono o telebisyon. Ito ay tao sa tao, pero ngayon, ibang-iba na. Nariyan ang internet, social media, at tinatawag nating AI o Artificial Intelligence. Dito na nagsisimula ang malawakang pagbabago ng paraan na ating pakikipag-ugnayan. Sa kabuuan, ang media transform ay hindi lamang tungkol sa bagong teknolohiya. Ito rin ay tungkol sa pagbabago sa ating mga relasyon at pananaw. Sa panahon ngayon, mahalaga na tayo ay maging responsable at bukas sa mga pagbabagong ito upang mas mapakinabangan natin ang teknolohiya sa positibong paraan.
What is communication between humans and divine? Communication between humans and divine is profound and multi-phase aspect of spiritual life, encompassing a variety of practices and experiences across cultures and religions. The examples are, the first one is prayer and invocation, meaning prayer is a central means of communication with the divine, serving as a personal dialogue where individuals express gratitude, seek guidance, or request assistance. Invocation, a related practice, involves calling upon a deity or spiritual force, often through rituals or spoken formulas, to invite their presence or intervention. The second one is prophecy and divine messenger. In many traditions, prophet acts a intermediaries, conveying message from the divine to humanity, meaning this message known as prophecies are often delivered through speech, writing, or symbolic acts during communities, guiding communities in matters of faith and morality. The third one is sacred texts and teachings. Sacred scriptures such as Bible, Quran, and others are considered the written word of the divine. Studying these texts allows individual to understand divine will, ethical principle, and spiritual wisdom. The last one is vision, dreams, and intuition. Many spiritual traditions acknowledge that the divine communicates through dreams, visions, and initiative insights. These experiences are often interpreted as personal revelations or what we call guidance, offering clarity and directions in one's spiritual journey. It also connect with rituals and ceremonies, meaning including worship services, festivals, and sacraments are structured practices that facilitate communication with the divine. They often involve symbolic act, music, dance, and offerings, creating a sacred place or sacred space for humans or individuals connection, following connection and reflection. Um, Communication with the divine is a deeply personal and communal experience, encompassing a wide range of practices and expression, whether through prayer, prophecy, art, or nature. These interactions reflect humanity's enduring quest for connections with the sacred.
Prayer as rhetoric. Prayer is part of rhetorical communication because it is a particular use of language for persuasive purposes. It consists of four primary aims: petition, praise, thanksgiving, and confession. Lament, accusation, blessings, and cursing are secondary purposes, for which prayer function as well. These are, in essence, which act by which humans size up a situation, soften an existential crisis or profound experience, and choose to respond with prayer. In this sense, prayer is a response to a crisis and simultaneously an opportunity to creatively act to address that situation. Prayer is both a situated and situating discourse. It speaks from a spirit form into the condition that give rise to its utterance, defining the situation at the same time it addresses that situation. So this topic is important to us because prayer is a conversation with God where we express our thoughts, feelings, needs, and desire to Him and also listen to what He may say to us. It is a way for us to deepen our relationship with God and seek His guidance and help in our lives. In short, God is a person who thinks, acts, and communicates. He is intimately involved with every bit of His action, including you and me, and He always hears what we speak to Him.
Sa relational prayer theory, may iba't ibang uri ng communication na may malalim na epekto sa ating buhay. Kabilang na dito ang spiritual at emotional. Para mas maintindihan natin ang pagkilos nito sa ating buhay, hinihikayat ni Beister ang mga mananaliksik na bigyang pansin ang kahalagahan ng panalangin sa kanilang mga pag-aaral. Kaya ang conclusion ng libro ay nagpapakita na ang communication ay hindi lamang limit sa pag-uusap ng tao sa tao. Kumbaga, it's much richer and more complex, encompassing our interactions with the natural world, technology, and even the spiritual realm. Understanding these different forms of communication is crucial for a deeper, more holistic understanding of the world around us. Yun lang po, and thank you po. And na po ang presentation po ng Group 3. Salamat po ulit.